We command technologies capable of editing DNA and leaving the solar system. Concurrently, we face rising existential risks and the accelerating collapse of institutional trust. The global mental health crisis, spiking anxiety, and the fracturing of societal consensus point toward a deep systemic failure. Policymakers attempt to manage this with minor regulatory tweaks or job retraining programs. These incremental adjustments fail because they misdiagnose the scale of the problem. In his book, The World After Capital, venture capitalist Albert Wenger argues we are not facing a standard disruption. We are crossing a civilization-scale, non-linear threshold. History proves that major technological breakthroughs reconfigure the primary limits of human survival. To survive this transition, we must recognize that physical capital is now abundant, understand why markets are failing to allocate our attention, and engineer the specific freedoms required to adapt. Misidentifying our ultimate scarcity guarantees that we will inevitably apply obsolete industrial age solutions to our modern knowledge age extinction risks. Scarcity is best defined functionally. It is the gap between human needs and available resources. Defining it strictly by price is a flaw of current economic thinking. This schematic models progress as a pipeline. In the forager age, the baseline of human existence, the absolute bottleneck was simply finding food. Agriculture solved the calorie deficit, but it immediately created a new limit. The bottleneck shifted to arable land. To survive the demands of land scarcity, societies engineered strict hierarchies, replacing egalitarian migratory tribes with rigid agrarian structures and theistic religions. 400 years ago, the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution bypassed the limits of arable land through steam power and mechanization. The bottleneck shifted again. Survival now depended on physical capital, the capacity to build machines, factories, and infrastructure. Societies engineered new structures for this reality. Populations urbanized, commons were enclosed into private property, and the Protestant work ethic drove mass labor. Market capitalism emerged as the optimal operating system to solve the immense measurement and incentive problems required to allocate that capital globally. Running an operating system optimized for capital scarcity, when capital is no longer scarce, leads directly to structural failure. We must separate physical capital, the factories, machines, and productive capacity, from financial capital, which is money and derivatives. They are no longer the same thing. Over the last several decades, financialization and stock buybacks separated entirely from the actual production of goods. The data proves that our global physical capacity can now easily meet the basic survival needs of all 7.9 billion humans. We possess over 220 billion square meters of buildings globally. Localized real estate booms have repeatedly resulted in massive oversupplies of shelter. Energy capacity follows the same trajectory. The production rate of solar panels has followed a steep exponential curve over the last 15 years. The ultimate historical proof of rapid capacity reallocation under existential pressure occurred during World War II. The United States diverted over 50% of its physical capital directly into the war effort, while completely maintaining domestic survival needs. The global capital base we possess today is an order of magnitude larger than the fraction of capital available in the 1940s. Localized shortages in housing or energy are distribution problems. They stem from a lack of focus, not a lack of physical capital. As this graphic illustrates, the new universal scarcity is attention. It requires both time and intentionality. Collective human attention has a hard mathematical cap. We are constrained by 24 hours in a day and further limited by the deceleration of global population growth. On an individual level, industrial identity paradigms are collapsing under the weight of automation, leaving populations adrift without a mechanism to forge meaning. On a collective level, we are failing to allocate focus toward immediate existential threats, from pandemics to the climate crisis. This scarcity of attention provides a grim solution to the Fermi paradox. Entire civilizations may wipe themselves out simply because they fail to allocate collective focus during critical planetary transitions. Market capitalism relies entirely on the price mechanism to aggregate information, but prices cannot aggregate or allocate attention. This matrix plots where markets break down. In the digital realm, copying knowledge has zero marginal cost, making it impossible to price. Markets also fail, facing infinite forecast error. Existential risks like asteroids lack historical data, meaning no market forms to solve them. Furthermore, combining zero marginal cost with network effects inevitably creates extreme monopolies, leading to regulatory capture by capital elites. Relying on market capitalism ensures we will underproduce life-saving knowledge and remain entirely blind to extinction-level events. This flywheel illustrates exactly where our attention is currently trapped: the job loop, an endless cycle of labor and hyperconsumption. To survive today, people sell their attention. This funds positional consumption, which in turn locks them into jobs they despise. Digital platforms weaponize this loop. They optimize their algorithms purely for cognitive capture, maximizing ad revenue by holding the user's gaze. These systems bypass rational System 2 thought. They deliberately trigger outrage, novelty, and confirmation bias to hijack the brain's automatic System 1 responses. The target architecture of the knowledge age operates differently. It relies on the knowledge loop, an upward spiral of continuous learning, creating, and sharing. To enable this, we need economic freedom. Universal basic income acts as an escape hatch, making market participation voluntary rather than a survival mandate. We also need informational freedom. This requires dismantling restrictive intellectual property laws and decentralizing computation through blockchains and DAOs. These engineered freedoms are the mandatory structural prerequisites for surviving the algorithmic hijacking of human civilization. The objective isn't destroying the economy, but systematically shrinking its footprint on our collective human attention. In the 1800s, agriculture consumed roughly 80% of human attention. Today, it requires less than 5%. Currently, the economic job loop dominates our waking hours. We must shrink the economic sector to under 20%, freeing attention for caregiving, research, and meaning. Navigating an environment of infinite digital noise will also require psychological freedom, the systematic practice of mindfulness to reclaim our focus. This transition is urgent. We are approaching a threshold driven by genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. Human purpose is separated from machine logic by qualia, the subjective experience of being alive, feeling emotion, and creating meaning. We face a strict binary choice. We can cling to an obsolete system of capital scarcity and succumb to algorithmic feudalism, or we can engineer the specific freedoms necessary to launch a humanist knowledge age.